Welcome to ERwin Data Modeler tutorial. In this session, I'll be talking about naming standards. In the first example, I'll show a demonstration on how to abbreviate the names. And in the second example, I'll try to show how we can enforce the naming of the tables and the attributes, and we'll see how the use of words like prime, modifier 1, modifier 2 and class can be used to construct uh, the names in the physical and or the logical model. Now, to start with the first example, I'll show how to abbreviate the words when we move from logical to physical. So for the first step for that is I need to go to tools, standards, and set the naming standards. Okay, and here I click a new naming standards file and say this is naming standard demo. I need to ensure that this is checked in, otherwise the naming standards will not be applied. And in here I can either create all these words, say like student abbreviated to std, and it's a prime word, and it can also appear as a modifier word or probably a class word and then a definition for it. I can do all of this manually, or I can import this from a CSV file. So basically what this is asking me is if I created some existing words, do I want to overwrite it? I would say yes, and I check the standards file that I have developed already for this, and I click open, and you see that all of the words are imported. This is the first header in my file, so I'll remove that to show you how I have developed the standards file. The standards file would look something like this. So the student is abbreviated to stud, and I for now put all of them as prime words. Ensure that it's a capital X and not a small x, otherwise you wouldn't see these checkboxes selected for it. Okay, now once this is done and I click OK, um, you still see that the words are not abbreviated. That's because I need to go to some other place called model naming options, right? And then I need to go to name mapping and say that when the transition from entity to table, attribute to column happens, I need to use the glossary as well. Okay, so I click OK, and then you see that all these words are abbreviated. Okay, now that these words are abbreviated, you want to check if it's actually done for all of them. For that, what we do is we check for naming standards compliance, and I'll check just table, columns, and domains. I'm not going to check the word order because I have not set it yet, and I'll discuss about that in our next example. So for now, it just says start, and it says the default domain, so let's just ignore that, and that's it. There's no issue in the naming standards now. Okay, and the other thing that we can also do is, if you observe here, in the logical, just the first letter is capitalized in the tables, and first word is capitalized. And if you want to make any changes to those, like probably say that in your logical you want to uh, put all of them as uppercase, just an example for demonstration, and I click OK, and it does it for us. All the entities name would be capitalized. And in say physical, you want to enforce that the first letter should be capitalized. I can just say initial letter should be capitalized, and I click OK, and so the initial letters will be capitalized. In this example, what I'll discuss is how to enforce the word order. By word order, I mean, say in here you see that employee first name is the word, and what we are saying is that every attribute should have three parts to it. One is the prime word, which is more like a subject area or the name of entities, and then we have a class word, which is the major classification of data that we have. For example, the data here is identifier, name and number. When you take these words, you can take an entire model and classify the data according to these words like percentage, amount, and say date. So those would constitute a class word. So if I set my naming standard as a prime, modifier and class, what ERwin lets me do is it has this nice tool called check naming standards compliance. So once I set my naming standards, I can go to this option here and it will tell me the entities or attributes that did not meet this criteria. So let's see how to set the naming standard first. So in our example, instead of taking three part, say for the entity, I'll just say the prime word. For attribute, just to make it simple, I'll just say for now it should contain a prime word and a class word. Okay, and then I go to my glossary and I pick my words, like all the words that I want to get abbreviated, and I set the words uh, for them accordingly. What I mean is I check saying that location is a prime word and a modifier word, and if I have used location in situation where it is not a prime or a modifier, the naming standard compliance report will capture that as an exception to this. Okay, so I want to highlight here the attribute is just two words, like the two words that you're seeing here. And for now what I've done is the location is both a prime word and a modifier word. The number, name and identifier, number, name and identifier are all class words. Okay, just before running that report, I want to ensure that naming options, okay, the glossary is selected, and then I go for tool standards, check naming standard compliance. In my earlier example, I just checked these three options and I didn't enforce the word order and position. Now I want to check for the word order and position. I check that option and click start. What you see first is it's complaining about building name. Okay, ignore and move next, and it says room number and I say ignore, and that's it. So it has found issue with building name and room number but not location identifier. So let's go back to our naming standards again and see why that is the case. The reason is location is both a prime word and a modifier word, and then when you go to our naming standards, our naming standard is a prime word and a class word should constitute an attribute. So the location identifier fits that profile, so it's a clean attribute, whereas the building and the room, if you check them, the room is just a modifier, building is a modifier. Okay, and to show you how to basically be careful while setting this profile, let me go to the more logical naming standard itself and say that okay, my naming standard is just a modifier and a class. Now the moment I do that, the location, building and room, all these three attributes satisfy that naming criteria, because building name is a modifier, location is a modifier, and the room is a modifier, and identifier, name and number are class words already. Okay, so the moment I close this, I said tool standards, check naming standards compliance, and there you go, it has no issue. So what I'm trying to emphasize here is the moment you pick a naming standard for this, and the naming standards can be two words or multiple words, like probably you want to select something like this, not necessarily this, just an example, and you want to select a probably a criteria for the domain as well, and then when you go to your glossary, the words in the glossary will be used to fill in these positions, and those positions are checked against your entity, right? So if you are enforcing the word order and position, you have to make sure that you spend a lot of time on this glossary here and choosing which words can be used in, sorry about that. What I meant to say is you need to ensure how you want to classify your words. Say for example, this room here, is it just a modifier, or are there scenarios that it fits in as a prime and probably a modifier to or a class word? So we need to spend a lot of time on this, on the glossary, and classifying the words accordingly to ensure that it meets the naming standards. So this was what I wanted to discuss in naming standards. Hope that you like this video, and thanks a lot for watching.